Okay, I'm going to move on to melody questions now. I practice ear training exercises on a daily basis, and while I'm still pretty much at the beginning, I start to get the feel of the major scale. But outside of the context of the learning app, I feel I'm at point 0. How can I put ear training into practice? Yeah, this is a very common question, and there's another one here that's similar. I'm getting better at hearing the intervals in the app and singing from memory, feeling, against a drone, but when I hear a singer or instrumentalist on a record, none of that seems to help identify the interval. I typically have to sing the melody and work out the notes from there by singing up or down to the tonic. Any advice on bridging this gap would be helpful. Okay, so this is the primary difficulty with the way that current ear training apps function, because they're non-contextual for the most part, and even when they are contextual, like Functional Ear Trainer or something, often the case is it's a single note that is played over a single chord or a drone, but even that is very rare to find in the apps. It's usually just an interval on its own, or it's a cadence and then an interval ringing, or a note ringing in free space or whatever. Of course, real music is constantly shifting root notes of chords, which can recontextualize the way that melody notes sound. So the point here is that, similar to what I said earlier, it's important at first to have someone tell you that you can separate the feeling states of the melody from the harmonic context. As in, when you hear a certain note, here's a C played over a C, then we go to F, we go to D minor, right? Always the C. Then we go to G. The chord heard on its own, plus the melody note, will cause the melody note to take on the feeling state of its relationship to the chord. So it'll sound like 1 against C, it will sound like 5 against F, it will sound like flat 7 against D, and so on. And that is actually quite useful to be able to do that too, as far as like hearing chord voicings and things. But it's also completely possible to be able to basically separate these such that you can hear the feeling states or feel the feeling states of the melody notes as the harmony is playing, but from the perspective of the key center. This might not be easy at first because, like I say, music is very complex and there's a lot of things going on. But once you have done work with learning the feeling states of scale degrees, the next step to get into real music is to listen to something that you're familiar with, hear the melody with the desire to identify those scale degree feeling states as they're going by, stop the song, sing or play the melody, if you must, which you probably will, to learn what they really are, make sure you have them correct, go back and listen again with the knowledge in mind. Repeat this over and over, and you will start to be able to hear them from the tonic perspective as opposed to from the chord perspective, even as the chords are moving. Again, it's just a matter of having to do that over and over again, but if you didn't realize that that can be done, or that this is even a problem that needs to be dealt with, that's the difficulty. Once you know that you can, and you know that this is perhaps the method to deal with that, which is hear the music, try to get it, pause it, definitely get it perfect, remember what they are, play the music, and keep it in mind as you hear it. By doing this over and over again, your mind will start to get the idea of what your intention is. Your ear will get the idea, however you want to say that. And it will start to parse it in that way to the point where you can actually kind of hear both simultaneously. You can tell that that's the 7 of the current chord, but it's the 3 of the key, or whatever it happens to be. That is definitely possible to do. But if you don't have the feeling states of the individual degrees already, obviously you can't do it at all. So that's why you start with the drone, because it's this isolated sort of simplified setting where everything is very clear over the tonic. Then you move into a situation that's more complex. hopefully in the future I'll have an app that allows us to work on this kind of thing in a increasingly complexified situation. But for now, we just have to go from hearing it with the drone to full music, hopefully kind of somewhat simple music, and doing it slowly, repeated over and over and over again. It's worth doing though, because it really does make a difference and will allow you to spontaneously interpret and know what you're hearing, even in fairly dense harmonic contexts. That being said, I will still get tripped up because there are so many potential harmonic contexts, especially when you're talking about non-diatonic chords and especially when you're talking about key changes, modulation. It can get very confusing, and that's natural because there's just so many possibilities, and I don't have perfect pitch to rely on or anything else to help me calculate. It's just has to be the feeling states, and the feeling states may shift very rapidly and in ways that are unexpected and I haven't trained on before, and I'll get lost. Do you see the sounds of the octave as sounds with interval or distance-based relationship to each other, or as individual different sounds like colors to a painter? So when improvising, do you think about where you want to go based solely on the relationships of the sounds, or just what sound you want to hear in the moment, or both? Both. As I mentioned earlier, the combination of melodic interval distance between successive notes, as well as individual feeling states of each degree, happens simultaneously when I'm improvising and when I'm transcribing, or when composing or whatever. And really, when I'm improvising something that is harmonic and melodic at the same time, there's the sense of wanting to hear a particular note, knowing that it's a half step above where I currently am, or a fifth above where I currently am, knowing that it's the feeling of the, 6 of the key, and it's the 9 of the chord I'm going to. All of that can happen simultaneously, and I can't say how or anything. It's just a matter of having done a lot of this training and a lot of playing on my instrument and experimenting and looking at voicings and hearing them over and over and over again. And all of that just spontaneously comes to bear, as it will for you, as it will for everyone. All of the listening experience and theory and all this will spontaneously appear in this weird mishmash in the way that it does, and it will gain clarity over time. At least it does for me. The more sort of playing experience that I have, analysis experience, music theory knowledge, as well as ear training experience, all just comes together. And sometimes there's a reliance on theory and calculation because there's muddiness in the hearing. And so there becomes, I'm trying to stay in time or something while I'm improvising. And so there's a feeling of, I have to calculate in this moment because I don't know the feeling state of this quick enough. So then there's the sense I'm going to the 2 chord, and I'm going to target the 9 of the 2 chord in the melody. And I may not even know ahead of time what that's going to sound like, but I'm doing it by calculation. And then as soon as it rings, it goes zing, and the feeling is, oh, of course, that. And from there, I'm stabilized again and can start, it's like this. It's just this weird soup of stuff just intermingling constantly. This person has 2 short questions. How does one practice to hear 2 or more parts at the same time? I assume this means melodic parts, but it maybe could mean harmonic and melodic. I don't know that I can, really, other than in a very sort of gestural way. Like as I'm hearing a melody, I can certainly tell that the lower part is a given distance from that melody, like a third or a fourth or a fifth. I can hear what the notes or degrees of the upper melody is, but I'm not simultaneously conscious of the specific degrees of what the lower one is. Even though I may instinctively be able to sort of play it back or generally get it, the accuracy is probably not very good, and it's not something that I've done much training on, period, because it's not rare that I need to. I'm not often in a situation where I need to do that, to be able to hear 2 simultaneous melodic parts and know what they are. I would just do one, then I would do the other, because there's no need to be able to do them simultaneously. If it's harmony and melody, that's a different story. And that has to do, again, with experience in hearing voicings, in hearing chord positions, as well as hearing scale degrees, and they all just blah, 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 mix together. And sometimes the right answer shows up continuously, and I know all that I'm hearing. And then there comes a moment when something happens and I get lost. And then for the next, could be forever, the next 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, it's gone. And I don't know what's happened. And I need to pause and go back and try again or whatever. Or play a note, if I play a note on my instrument, because I know what degree the note I'm playing is, 'cause I would assume I know what the key is or whatever, then it will give me a reference point. I need some way to get a reference again, basically. I either have to go back, get a reference, or play something, sing something, get a reference, and then it will start to all come together again. The other question is, should I stop practicing to identify random intervals and focus only on scale degrees with reference to the tonic? Are intervals a waste of time? If not, how should I practice them? As I say, no, it's not a waste of time. I do put scale degrees, higher in importance than I put melodic intervals, but it's really worth looking at both. When you're transcribing a melody, for instance, it's very easy to take note of what the melodic interval distances are between the things you're hearing, as well as when you're improvising. It sounds very different to leap up a fifth than it does to leap up a third or a seventh, and so these things come as a matter of course through playing, so long as you're conscious of them. That's the case with so much of this stuff. Someone who's played for 50 years but never had the intention to be conscious of what it is they're playing in a conceptual way may find this type of stuff to be very difficult, even though they've played a lot. But if you just have put a little bit of attention on these aspects, the names of things and the attaching of the labels, and clear about what key you're in and what the current chord number is, these sorts of things. Not that you need to do it constantly all the time and be a stickler about it. Just do it here and there. Take times when you're serious. Take times to just play and not think about anything, whatever. It will just come. The mind has this way of congealing information and being able to split experiential qualities apart into these conceptual chunks just by being directed by the intention to do that. All you need is to periodically remind and focus on that, and it will start to do it. It's not something that you can really do consciously. It's too much, it's too complex, too subtle. And the mind is great at that, at this sort of non-linear stuff that is directed by intention.